Hi, I'm Karena Walter, and welcome to the Standard Newsroom. I'm here with Mayor Walter Sendzik for our Chat with the Mayor.
It's great to be back. It's the end of May.
It is.
We've had enough rain.
We absolutely have, and it's also NBA Finals tonight. Historic game for the Raptors,
Yes,
and
it is.
I understand the city is having a little bit of trouble showing its spirit. What's going on with the Raptors flag you promised?
It's
would
the
be,
flag flap.
Okay, what is happening?
We've called every outlet possible who we would think would have an oversized flag that people can hang in their windows or whatever.
This was to hang in front of City Hall.
We wanted to put it up the flagpole. And little did we know that it's difficult to find a flag the size that you can fly on a flagpole. And so it's a bit of a flag flap. And I think by the end of the day, we should have the flag issue resolved.
You've put a call out to
Yes, we have.
residents asking if anybody has a large Raptors flag available.
And I think we were going to have a couple that hopefully will be delivered to City Hall. So
Okay.
we're optimistic, and we're just as optimistic that the Raptors they're gonna win this one. I got a feeling they're gonna win.
If you do get a flag, is it going to be flying for the entire series?
Yeah, it'll fly as long as the Raptors. Well, it'll fly until they win the championships this year. I got a good feeling.
Okay.
Now, if you're gonna go bet on stuff, don't take that feeling to the bank.
Yes.
It's just my own personal feeling.
Okay, well, we could also bet on whether it'll be an old Raptors flag or a new Raptors flag.
I'll take the purple one. I don't. It doesn't bother me as long as it has
anything at this
Raptors in there.
We have a lot of questions from readers.
That's a
after
good thing.
We put the call out for Ask Sendzik.
Yeah.
I did have a question of my own first, though, that I wanted to ask you about. And last night, the city councilors had a strategic planning session at the
Yes, we did.
library. You guys set out goals and priorities for the year. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that and what happened.
Well, it was a great opportunity for council to get together as a group and look at where we want to go as a city. And so we had some facilitators in the room who were able to look at our strategic direction that we've established to be one of the most innovative, livable, sustainable, dynamic cities in North America. And how does council and how does the senior team start to create that roadmap? And so we had a strong strategic plan in 2015. It goes until 2025. So we're right in the middle of that first strategic plan that we had developed as a previous council. And this is an opportunity for the current council to look at some of the objectives, look at what we've already achieved, and create some further objectives that will move us down that path towards our ultimate vision. And last night was an opportunity. See, the strategic plan is built on 4 pillars: cultural, economic, social, and environmental. So that's the underpinnings of community. And now we look at it and go, well, what's under environmental that we can start to focus in on, or what's under the social that we can start to focus in on? Social could be anything from building stronger neighborhoods. Cultural could be how do we support and enhance and celebrate our cultural diversity? And what does that look like as a corporation, and what does that look like as a city? And when you look at the economic side, it's about the affordability of a city, and it's also how are we operating in an efficient fiscal way as a corporation. So the strategic planning side of it has to look at, and the unique side of this is that you've got the lens of community, and then you got the lens of the corporation. And they're interchangeable, but when you look at the actual corporate entity, we got 600 employees, we got 300 part-time employees. We do everything from libraries to arenas to paving the roads and the sidewalks and the trees and the parks. We've got so many different aspects as a corporation, but then how does all that play a role within the community and helping to support and sustain and build a vibrant, dynamic community? So it really gets you engaged. It gets the council engaged in thinking in a higher level. Because you've been around council. Sometimes we can get drawn into the weeds, and we could talk about an issue for 2 hours that really should have been a staff decision and we could have moved on. But it hits our table and we focus a little bit too much on that, and then it takes attention away from, well, where do we want to go long-term as a city, and what kind of strategic discussion should we be having about where we're investing our dollars? How does the planning of the city impact on the affordability of a city? So those are bigger issues, and sometimes we don't get to those issues because council can get bogged down. So the strategic plan is an opportunity to stay focused.
Is the this like an informal discussion that councillors kind of have as you're sitting around and throwing out ideas?
No, it's structured. We have a great company, disruptive something, and disruptive is the company, and so it's Chris McQueen and Fiona Peaceful, and they set the structure, and so it is a structured discussion, but it allows for looking at the 4 pillars, looking at how do we achieve affordability in our community. What does that look like? And then we start to put action items on it. So it is a informative, structured discussion.
So what were some of the new action items that were added?
Well, one on the environmental side is we've declared, through the leadership of Councillor Williamson, we talked about the climate emergency that we had declared a couple weeks ago. Well, we can't just declare something like that and not do something. So as a corporation, we've set a marker out there about going to zero net waste by 2030. So how do we build in our corporate structure moving towards a zero net waste? And the thinking is we should be doing it first. We can't go to the community and say, you've got to play your part and you've got to do more on your waste reduction strategies. And as a corporation, we're just going to sit here and continue to not have recycling in our parks. We're not going to have recycling in our community centers. We're not going to have fuel efficient vehicles. We're going to continue to sit back and just let things happen. We're going to lead by example. And so that was on the environmental. On the economic side, Councillor Miller came in and we talked about wage growth. We talk about business attraction and investment. Well, what about wage growth? Because we can be attracting a lot of businesses to the community, but if they're only paying minimum wage, how does that create the affordability of a community? And so I applaud Greg for doing that. And his thing was, well, we should be also measuring the kind of jobs we're bringing to the community that we're attracting here on a wage growth perspective. And that looks around livability in a community. So those are 2 ones. And we talked about our diversity, equality, inclusivity. You've heard that a lot around this council's table. And so we want that to be a very much a focused objective. And that goes in social, that goes in cultural, that goes in economic. It hits all the markers. So you're really excited. What I find is you come out of these meetings and you're more excited about getting to work because one is you see council getting together on common interests, but you also start to think in a much bigger way and go, okay, we could tackle these issues. But it's not just council, it's not just staff. It's going to be the entire community getting behind these initiatives and saying, yeah, we believe in where you want to go.
We're going to get to our questions from readers here, and it's going to be like a rapid fire thing.
All right.
Because we got a lot of
If I
questions.
start
for you.
sweating, it's because it's hot in here.
Okay, yeah, it is. Some of them are the big issues, big picture issues
Yeah.
you're talking about. Some of them are the smaller. So first from Twitter, from DJ Mayer. St. Catharines recently increased to 9th on the list of most expensive cities for rent prices in Canada, making it increasingly harder for people to pay their bills, feed their families, and enjoy their free time. Why is this not priority 1 for the city and region?
It has been, DJ Mayer, it has been a priority 1 since 2015 when we started to see the early shifts in vacancies in St. Catharines. The previous council, we have a cap of 3% vacancy rate. Anything below that, when a company wants the ownership of a property comes in and they want to convert an apartment building to condo, can't do that right now. And that's because our vacancy is below 3%. That was something that would keep affordability on at least the rental market for apartments on the market. We have a housing action plan that we brought in last term of council that talks about secondary suites, it talks about inclusionary zoning, talks about affordable housing builds. We have the Carlton Street, Niagara Regional Housing just opened. That was under this last term of council. We have the Bethlehem Pantera housing complex that's being built on Church Street. That was the last term of council. This has been a priority of council. And there have been some who say, well, it's not in your domain. Affordable housing is not in your domain. That's a regional issue or that's a provincial issue. And my belief, and I think with the support of majority of council, is that it's all of our issues. We've got to tackle affordable housing as a group, not as pushing it off to another level of government. So we have land in the city that we've done an expression of interest on, that we're looking to work with housing providers that can build affordable housing on these city-owned vacant properties that we have. So this has been, I would say, the number 1, if not number 2 priority of last term of council and this term of council, and you're starting to see the results. The reality is, it's not going to be solved overnight. And so over in the DM location of our community over on just off of Glenridge, we've got 2 20-story buildings being built by Homestead, all apartment units. It's going to take 18 months. So, addressing this isn't simply just snapping your fingers and going, oh, look at all the affordable housing we have. No, you got to build it. And unfortunately, the building takes time. So we have a plan. It's in place. We're working towards it, but we can't build fast enough.
I often find the terms affordable housing is sort of thrown around a lot to also mean housing that's
Social
affordable,
housing,
and then there's also social housing. But
so it's interchangeable. Social housing is those who are most at need. They can't really afford to pay rent at all, and they have maybe some mental or some issues associated with why they don't have housing or they have limited housing. Then there's rent geared to income. There's a lot of rent geared to income programs that are available. There's a lot of people using rent geared to income. And we have a lot of agencies that are working with housing providers that are getting people into homes and places where they can call it home. And so there's, I guess the answer to the question at the end is, there's a lot of different organizations and people working on this affordable housing issue and social housing. And unfortunately, again, you don't see the results every day, but there's a lot of people working on it.
I think too, though, sometimes people who don't qualify for those programs are also having trouble making ends meet as the rents are going up and stuff. So do you think when new apartment buildings go up, that increasing that rental stock will also help with keeping the prices down a little bit?
Yeah, it will. It'll be a supply and demand will dictate what people can charge. But the reality is that there's more and more people who are discovering Niagara as a desirable place to live. And it's a good thing on one side because you're getting more people to come into the marketplace. But it's tough for people who are living here they can't afford to pay $1,500 rent when 2 years ago the rent was $1,100 or it was $900. And so the increases that you're seeing or the spaces that are available become more and more of a challenge. So we acutely understand that this is an issue, and you saw it in the strategic discussion yesterday. Affordability in our community is going to be a major issue moving forward for a number of years.
Totally different topic. Justin Nichols, he's asking about Victoria Lawn Administrative Building. The city has a new administrative building now that's been built, and the old one is still sitting there, and there's still discussions ongoing about its future. He is asking, are you pro or against the preservation of the former Victoria Lawn Administration building?
Honestly, a great question, Justin, and the Heritage Committee will have an opportunity because we've asked the Heritage Committee to look at the building. It has been an administrative building for a number of years. I can say from going through it before we built the new one, it has been remodeled a lot. So this idea that there's nothing heritage inside. It's all been torn apart, and you've had these little cubicles that were at. Anyone who has worked in there in the last number of years would agree that it's not a desirable place to be. And so we're working with the museum, we'll be working with the Heritage Committee to look at that and go, what does preservation look like? And one of the things is affordability of a city versus being able to preserve something like that. We've got to be able to balance that, and we'll be looking forward to having a report come back through the Heritage Committee that looks at what does preservation look like, and is that a space that can be repurposed, and if not, what do we do with it? So I don't have the definitive yes or no. It's important to preserve our built heritage, but what does preservation look like? And I think that's going to be the discussion of the Heritage Committee.
Okay. We have an email from Karen McCabe. This is related to a tweet that you made after your daughter's soccer team won gold last weekend. She says, after viewing the victory photo of his daughter's Jets soccer team, I am wondering if St. Catharines is considering upgrading their playing field's quality and quantity to be a city that could host tournaments and attract bigger soccer events. Canadian Premier League in its inaugural year, and Niagara has a big soccer base, but St. Catharines has not the quality of facilities to support growth of this sport in the city.
I would have to say I disagree, and I disagree because I think Lester B. Pearson and Lancaster, outside of the washrooms at Lancaster, because when they were examined this year, they are in need of some significant repair. So those are the dressing rooms that the athletes get to go and change in. So we're going to be doing a complete overhaul of the change rooms at Lancaster. But Lester B and Lancaster fields are arguably some of the best fields that I've actually been on. And so I can actually say this honestly, because my daughter plays Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, Paris, Ontario. We have tournaments that crisscross the province, and I'm stunned about how nice our fields are. Now, these are Class A fields. So the way we structure our field system is you got Class A, Class B, Class C. Class A is the premium fields. That would be the fields that I talked about. Class B would be like the house leagues, where you're going to be out there and you're not playing travel. And the Class C is more for practice. So do we have enough Class A fields? And I think that's probably the question. The answer is no. We now have turf fields at Simcoe, Brock University, Sir Winston Churchill. So we've got the introduction of these turf fields. Not necessarily a fan of turf fields, because I think what it does to kids as they're developing on their bodies isn't exactly as strong as what happens when you play on natural turf. So I'm not a big fan, but it has opened up the door for more consistent training on those fields. So, and it does actually introduce into the playing strata the opportunity to play on fields that would otherwise be a mess, too wet, too bumpy. So it gives you a level playing field. So we're investing, and I think with the Canada Summer Games,
I was wondering about that.
you're going to see a continued investment in soccer fields. So I'm hoping, Karen, that by 2021, we will have a strong complement of fields that will attract Class A tournaments. I will say this, though, shout out to Club Roma. They have an annual Tiamo Festival soccer tournament. 270 teams come. So that means Ridley Field's being used, all the high school fields, all the city fields, 270 teams. We have a strong infrastructure for soccer. We just have to raise it up a couple notches.
I have a baseball question for you as well from Rob Lang. Why is the baseball diamond at Alex McKenzie Park always locked when not in use by a baseball junior team? There's not a lot of parkland in the core, and attempting to play ball with my boys is difficult in the smaller area of the park and a little dangerous for the people. The tennis courts are always available. Open it up to the public, please.
The struggle with that one, Rob, is that as I talked about the soccer pitches, the McKenzie Park is, besides George Taylor, those are our two signature baseball diamonds, and they're permit only. So they're locked because they are our Class A hardball diamonds. And so allowing the public to continuously go on there day in and day out when there's no teams on there will start to destroy the turf, start to destroy the pitching mound, the amenities that the sort of the layout of the field where kids may just go and it is that I will say that diamond's been there since the 1930s. It is arguably one of the best kept baseball fields in Niagara. And so it's kept that way because it's a permit-only program. So it's unfortunate, and you're right, there is a lack of green space in the area that he's talking about. So we've got to look at other spaces like Catharines Street Park is a beautifully big park, but what is it? Can it be used for baseball? Not really. It's a soccer field. So we've got to look at other spaces, but that in itself is the reason why that park is closed only unless permitted by a association or by permit.
When you're talking about permit, the city is making money from organizations that are coming in and they're paying to use that space. Okay. Dan and Anita Skinner asked a lengthy question about what's happening downtown St. Catharines. I'm just going to summarize it here. But they're saying downtown St. Catharines is currently being inundated with exceptional numbers of indigent people of both genders. We are frontline witnesses from our porch on Queen Street of public urination, brawls, domestic fights at 3 a.m., drug injection on our front porch, crack smoking, threats of bodily harm. They say the mayor has said on numerous occasions that this problem is not just a St. Catharines, but a province and countrywide one. One would think that with the wealth of newly graduated social justice warriors and social scientists that exist, that there would be a plethora of real solutions to a real problem. My question is, does the mayor have any concrete ideas to how to deal with this very real problem? We've lived in the core for 45 years and have never seen it this bad.
Yeah, it's and you know what? That's one perspective of the downtown. I will say that we put a lot of work into our downtown. I've been born and raised in the city, and I've lived in the downtown area for 20 years. The downtown has never been better. Anyone who would say that this is the worst it's ever been, I guess you forgot what it was like 15 years ago when the drugs were on St. Paul Street, where you wouldn't be on St. Paul Street because there was fights coming out of the old Russell Hotel. It's frustrating because people have a tendency to use this lens of, oh, the past was always better. And the previous council, under the leadership of Brian McMullen, they invested over $200 million into facilities downtown that have completely transformed the downtown. And prior to that, it was a wasteland. And so, for people, there's folks out there who say, oh, downtown's the worst it's ever been. I don't buy that. I don't agree with it. I just think that their eyes were closed 10 years ago. And now that there's more people in the downtown, there is also more people who are struggling through addiction. There's homeless issues, there's mental health issues. And there's a lot of folks working on these issues. You got the Niagara Regional Police. We've got Foot Patrol in the downtown. We brought Foot Patrol downtown. We went to the Niagara Regional Police and said, we need to see more Foot Patrol. And they said, yeah, we're going to bring it down. So that started in May. We've got Positive Living and Start Me Up Niagara and Community Care. They're doing outreach programs, coming into the downtown, working with the people who are presenting themselves as homeless. We have RAF that comes into our downtown working with youth, at-risk youth, who they identify. There's a lot of people who are working in our downtown space on these issues that are presenting themselves. But they were always there. It's just that we turned a blind eye to them previously. Downtown was in such dire straits that no one cared. But because now that we have this infrastructure, we have vibrant restaurants, we have new retail, we've got new businesses coming into the downtown, of course, there still is that element of folks who are struggling that have always been there, but it's magnified now. And so we're still working on it. We've got our plans in place. We're working aggressively with different organizations. And it's funny when people say, what concrete examples? I've given you concrete examples, and I will continue to give you concrete examples. But those who just sit back and say the downtown is going down, get involved. Get off your front porch and get involved. Ask an organization how you can be a part of something. That's what a compassionate city looks like. It's getting involved. It's saying, I identify an issue. Instead of just going online and ranting about it, why don't you just get involved? Call an organization and say, how can I be a part of the solution? That's how we're going to solve this stuff. People who just talk and want to complain about it, you know what? There's a lot of people who are doing heavy lifting. How about you lighten the load by doing some heavy lifting with them?
So that's your, because these people are saying this is happening at their home, and they've lived in that home for decades.
Yeah, it's happening in other people's homes, and other people have gotten involved and said, okay, how can we be a part of this? Can we work with the police? Can we work with Salvation Army? What can we do? Things are being done. We've got the safe injection site that we pushed for that's opened. That has reduced the number of needles in Centennial Park. We've seen a reduction in places where people are doing their drugs. They're now going to Positive Living. Those are all net benefits. Those are all things that we were pushing for. So is it going to be solved overnight? And when I say that this isn't just a St. Cat, this is a national. If you read any document about cities in North America, it is a pan-North American epidemic. The opioid addiction rate is through the roof. Did I create that? No. Did the people of St. Catharines create that? No. But we have to deal with it. And we are dealing with it. But it's easy to complain. The hardest thing to do is actually get involved.
Robin Chiera is asking about, she says, can there be something done about the panhandlers on the off-ramps of the 406 at Glendale and downtown on Queenston Street in Geneva?
Yes, because it's dangerous to the motorists, and it's also dangerous to the individuals. And so that is under the jurisdiction of the OPP and the Ministry of Transportation. We consistently reach out to them. Our transportation team reaches out to them, asking for a better crackdown on those panhandling there, because it does cause disruption. And what you see is they go in, the police do their thing, they move them along, and as the police have said to me, you give them a ticket, they don't have money to pay for the ticket anyway, and they're going to come back a couple days later. So it's just a continuous, don't give them any money, first thing. That's the one thing that the police and communicator, Betty Lou Suter, is great with this. She says, don't give them any money. The only reason why they're standing there is because people are giving them money. And they're like a group, they move around. So there's services in our community. If they need food, if they need a place to stay, if they need shelter, if they need clothing, there's places for them to go. So just stop enabling them on the corner, and they'll leave. If they're not getting anything in their little cup, they'll leave. but they shouldn't be there, and the police have been called numerous times, and every once in a while you'll see they'll be ushered out for a couple of days, and then they'll be back.
Yeah, it is dangerous.
It is dangerous.
It is right at the end of that,
Yep.
that off-ramp there. Michael Scott, I don't know which Michael Scott this is, there's several in the city.
Yes, there is.
Isn't it?
I grew up with a Mike Scott.
And then there's the office's Mike Scott too, but I don't think it's from him. Firefighters. When is the city going to get its crippling fire services budget under control? The City of Toronto has a population of 2.93 million and a fire services budget of 475 million. That's $162 in taxes annually per citizen. St. Catharines, by comparison, has a population of 130,000, fire services budget of 25 million. That's 192 million for every man, woman, and child. Is there a way to get this line item down?
It's difficult because it's about service agreements, and so all we can control as a municipality is the level of service of firefighting in our community. And so our service agreement, we've had that in place for a number of years, and it's a very difficult agreement to dramatically change. So it identifies the number of riders per truck, it identifies how many minutes to a emergency, it talks about everything to do with how is the service of fire protection and management being provided in a community. So that's really the agreement that dictates how many people we hire, and then that's where you get the labor costs. The biggest driver is labor. Mm-hmm. So, I think Mike's very correct, is that it is a big part of our budget, and moving forward, we have to figure out, if we're going to be an affordable city, how do we create the overall affordability, because if fire just keeps going up, and that means we have to close more arenas or more pools, or because we can't just increase taxes all the time. That's more and more people are understanding that increasing taxes, there's no money tree out there. There's no magic tree of money that just go increase property taxes. And I've heard that before, where you can always pay for more fire, but you just pay more property taxes. Even the firefighters are saying that's not an option. We have to make sure that we're living within our means, and that's going to be the discussion moving forward, and that is a discussion. I got to say, we have one of the best relationships with our fire association here in St. Catharines. Our fire management team has come together really well, and so we've got a strong management team, we've got a strong union that's working with the City of St. Catharines. So I'm seeing things in the future being in a space where it's about affordability as well as level of protection, and that's where we have to go. So it's going to take us some time, Mike, to get that balance, but I think we're definitely on our way.
We have gone way longer than usual, but just one more question from Barry Wilson. I think this is in reference to a story that we ran today about the DSBN trustees under a gag order. As the mayor speaks for the city, does he demand all councillors get permission from him to speak publicly?
The council's different. Karena. The council is different because each member of council is elected by the public, and same with the DSBN. I have been on other boards. I've been on the Niagara College board. I've been on the board of the LCBO. I've been on the board of a number of different large organizations, and it is an understanding that the chair of the board speaks for the board. And so if you have a board member that goes out and speaks against the board or against a decision of the board, that's an unhealthy dynamics. It is board governance 101. When your board makes a decision, even if you're a contrarian voice, you're supposed to be on side with the board decision, and the chair speaks for the board. That is a very important component of sort of overall board governance. At a council level, they're all elected by members of the public. So the expectation is, and I believe this, is that when we make a decision as council, we should try and be as respectful of that decision as possible. Because there's decisions that council makes that I don't necessarily agree with. But when I go on radio, I'll say, council made this decision last night, and here's why they made that decision. My vote may have gone a different way, but I respect the decision of council. And that's where, if you have the experience of being on a board, or if you have experience being in an environment like that, you'll have a better understanding of, you can't just come out of a meeting and start talking negatively about the organization that you represent. It's not healthy. Or you can't come out of a meeting and start talking about the decisions that they made in a negative way. And I say you can't because you're part of that board. You have an obligation to the corporation. When you join the Niagara Regional Police Board, you have an obligation to that board and to the police to uphold the decisions that are being made by the board. And so there's a subtlety there. And I think it's just a level of education. Like when you go through board training, and I think, at the DSBN level, when the new trustees go through additional training, it'll become a little bit more clear that there's a time and place for taking a position, but you got to make sure that when you do take a position, you have to acknowledge that the chair is the spokesperson for the DSBN, and that after decisions are made, really, it's important that you support the decision. You can still have a contrarian voice, but you still have to just support the decision, because it's a group decision that's being made.
I think just to be clear with this one, what happened with the DSBN was somebody who was speaking about a motion that they were bringing forward or why they were bringing forward an idea. It wasn't to criticize the board that was coming. But our city council just passed a code of conduct recently as well, but there's nothing in there that says they can't speak freely about anything.
But again, our city clerk has also made it clear as part of the training that the mayor is the person that speaks on behalf of the council. Doesn't mean the council can't speak and talk about issues that are in front of them, but just be respectful of the fact that even under the Municipal Act, the mayor is seen as the head of the board. And so they have an obligation to be the spokesperson for the organization, and then the councilors are there as a board of directors. And again, once you make a decision, the understanding is everyone needs to get behind the decision, or you got to be mindful of how contrarian you want to be.
And that's why we have our show Ask Sendzik and not Ask Council, all 12 councillors.
Well, that would make for a very
hot crowded
room.
Thanks for coming in again.
Thanks for having me. I'm enjoying the questions. A lot of questions are coming in, and keep going. I'm hoping that more and more questions will come in so we can have a longer discussion.
Mm-hmm. And for those who sent in questions and we didn't get to them, just know I will keep them for the next chat, because a lot of them will still be very relevant next month, hopefully, when we see you again.
What about the question that says, Mayor, can you make it stop raining?
I don't think
I can't do that.
even in your power, I don't think that's going to
Not even close.
Yeah. Thanks very much, and thanks for joining us.